Iran, breaking news now coming in. President Donald Trump has issued a statement in Persian to people of Iran via the State Department. Now, President Trump's message to the people of Iran is, and I quote, "You must have a deep feeling for freedom. Nothing is like freedom. You are brave people. It is regrettable what has happened to your country. Your country was a great country." This is the very message given in Persian to the people who have come out to the streets already in Tehran to protest against the Iranian regime, against the Supreme Leader's regime, amid an economic crisis that's hit the country. So there are developments taking place with each passing minute at this given point of time, but the US is indeed keeping a very close watch on the situation panning out in Tehran. In fact, our colleague earlier was also saying that the CENTCOM has also issued a notification that they are very closely watching Iran at this given point of time. Whether this turns out, the 2026 protests in Iran started in 2025, whether this turns out to be a revolution like the one we saw in 1979, that remains to be a question. Another big question is, if indeed the situation worsens, which it has since day one that the protests begun, will there be power blocks that get associated and involved apart from the United States and come in support of the current Iranian regime? That too remains to be a question. But yes, Donald Trump has consistently been warning Iranian regime and authorities that they do not take any violent action against the protesters, else the US will be hitting hard. That's the message that's also come in from President Donald Trump at this point of time. Let me take you through all the details of Iran at this given point of time, the protests that has gripped Iran at this given point of time, because the situation remains grim and tense, with at least 45 people losing their lives in the violence so far. Arson and violence continued across the country as protesters hit the streets against the Ali Khamenei regime. A police station was set ablaze in Mashhad, while forces clashed with the demonstrators in Tabriz. In the capital of Tehran, arson and violence has erupted across several areas. The mob attacked Basij headquarters, and a police officer's bike was also set ablaze. Protesters chanted final battle slogans as they flooded the streets in massive numbers. Meanwhile, Iran's exiled crown prince again has appealed to the people, urging them to keep demonstrations disciplined and as large as possible. Amid the raging violence, the US president, if we take a look at the geopolitical reactions coming in at this point of time, Donald Trump has issued a sharp warning, which we were telling you about, to Iran's leadership. He has said that the United States will take severe action if authorities escalated their response to the nationwide protests and began killing demonstrators at this given point of time.
و قطعا توجه کردید که ازدحام جمعیت باعث این میشه که نیروها پس بروند و امکان ریزش رو به سمت شما بیشتر میکنن. بنابراین مهم استش که این انضباط و گستردگی رو حفظ بکنیم. من اولین فراخوان خود را امروز با شما در میان میگذارم و از شما دعوت میکنم که این جمعه و پنجشنبه 18 و 19 دی ماه را سر ساعت 8 شب همگی چه در خیابانها یا حتی از منازل خودتون شروع به شعار سر دادن بکنید. در نتیجه بازخورد این حرکت‌ها من فراخوان‌های بعدی رو به شما اعلام خواهم کرد.
Now we'll look at the current developments in greater depths with Adrian Kalmal, terrorism and Middle Eastern scholar, who's joining us on the broadcast to bring in his insights to the table at this point as to what exactly is happening in Iran. Mr. Kalaman, thank you for speaking to us at India Today. My first question, before we head into the geopolitical aspect, the external influence and the US's role into this entire situation, my first question to you would be, do you think the 2026 protests, the one that began in 2025 and we see in 2026 continuing, does it resemble 1979, and is Iran looking at a possible regime change at this point of time?
Well, first of all, thank you, Shreya, for having me on the show. And good morning to you and your viewers. I wouldn't, I don't like to say history repeats itself, but it definitely it rhymes. And your headline there saying Iran imploding, and then your specific mention of the bazaars and the bazaars shutting down and the impact that had. that does have echoes of 1979. And that is why I think you've seen all the people come out in the streets. And that, I think that's one of the reasons why people have labeled this as an economic crisis. To be honest, the Islamic Republic has been going through an economic crisis for years now with, Weimar Republic inflation. So, yeah, it's it's you're going to start to see defections. You see the Crown Prince talking about possible defections, and with the defections, we also have to remember with the IRGC, they control the economy, about 70–80% of it, and there's a lot of people that are just living day to day and barely getting by. And within those IRGC ranks are people working for the government. They see their peers getting rich while they are barely scraping by. And you've had rolling protests for years now, where some of these people are really tired of, they're questioning not the zealots, but individuals are questioning, where's the humanity in this? Why are we doing this? Why are we violently repressing the people? So I do think 2026, from what I'm seeing right now, I have not seen, and I've been tracking this my entire lifetime since 1979. I have not seen protests on this scale. And this isn't hyperbole. This isn't me overstating the fact. This is countrywide, large cities, rural areas. It's across the nation, and the regime is shaking right now.
And you are right when you say that, because a lot of people are taking a look at these protests and they have to say the same thing, that these very protests this time, they don't look like the ones that have taken place in the last few years, ever since 1979. It's the nature of the protest and the symbolic Grand Tehran Bazaar being right at the center of this very uprising of sorts that we are looking at as well. Whether it will be an uprising or not, that remains to be a question. But let me understand this from you. There's a catch-22 situation for the current Iranian regime right now. Because on one side, we have Donald Trump warning the regime that you do not take any action against the protesters, else US will act. On the other side, if the current regime lets this protest continue, there will come a tipping point in the very near future where they will have to give in to the pressure, at least from what we are seeing in terms of the nature of the protest. So the US's involvement at this given point of time, how are you looking, and how do you think that might be shaping up this entire protest in these upcoming days?
That is a fantastic question. And here's my response to this about Trump's statement. And then I'm also going to pan back a few months to the 12-day conflict that they had, the Israel and then the U.S. with a coup de grace on the nuclear facilities. Well, the news is the nuclear facilities aren't completely damaged. They're not completely offline. There's concerns in the towns at Pickaxe Mountain that there's work being done. So the first two targets during that wave of bombing campaign were ballistic missiles and the nuclear facilities, which were done, and the Islamic Republic's trying to build them up. The next set of targets past day 14, moving into the next week, were the security forces, the besieged, the individuals, the repressive forces of the regime that put down the people. So I think they're giving what the regime is, they're trying to what to do. I believe the tactic here is hopefully get some defections, get some space. Also see if you can get members of the Artesh, which is actual national army, to defect away from the government, because really they're kind of pitted against the IRGC and the besieged units in many cases. So I think it's Trump saying, we've warned you here. We called off this 12-day conflict a little premature. We could have taken out more of your assets, including your repressive forces. And if you decide to fire on them, that's still on the table. And don't be surprised if we start hitting the IRGC bases, the besieged bases. If I know where they are, and I've seen maps of where they are, the U.S. administration, the DOD, they know where they are.
So it is a rather tricky situation that we are in at this given point of time, Adrian, that we are in fact looking at develop in Iran.